Okay, so welcome to another edition of Assistant Conversations. And I'm pretty excited about this one today because I'm in the studio with Dr. Mfodwo of the Brain and Mind Hospital. And before I even start talking to Doctor, this video is sponsored by the Brain and Mind Hospital. And it's Ghana's premier private mental health facility based in the lush garden grounds in Abokobi. So they offer inpatient admissions for addictions and drug abuse, outpatient services, and sleep study. This, I'm interested in the sleep part. Yeah. But yeah, they have therapists, trained clinical psychologists available every day of the week. And you can find them on social media if you want to reach out. Their handle is at the Brain and Mind Hospital, all platforms. I'm going to leave the handle on the screen for you to check it out. So yeah, I'm going to have a conversation with Dr. Mfodwo about the mind or the brain. Before I even find out how he got into this craft of figuring out the mind, I want to know what's the difference between the brain and the mind.
I think that thank you very much to your widely growing audience, and I'm privileged to be on Asitna. Just to answer that question with respect to the difference between the brain and the mind, I think the brain is the structural thing. The what it does functionally is the mind in terms of so that the two go hand in hand. The brain is the structure, and the what how it expresses itself is the mind. And when we go into a bit deeper, different parts of the brain have different functions, which would then come together to express how the mind works.
Yeah.
So if that, I hope that explanation simplifies
Yeah,
things
I,
a
I
bit.
can, yeah, it makes sense.
Okay.
At what point, okay, it's funny. At what point did you make up your mind to go this way into psychiatry
Yeah, I think
or
it
to
was.
figure out the mind?
Yeah, I think that it was quite early in my medical school. I think as early as the fifth or sixth year. Very much influenced by my teacher or lecturer at the time, the late Prof. Nia Texan. But it also, I mean, my first contact with mental health, it struck me that, oh, this is an area of vast opportunity, especially for the future, because it was not, it wasn't the orthodox, whether obstetrics, pediatrics, or child or surgery, it wasn't the normal run of the mill medicine, and so that fascinated me, and one could see a future in the future.
Right.
So in that respect, also the honest truth is that the brain and the mind are almost like the last frontier in understanding as humans. And so it's all exciting stuff as one has
Yeah.
been in this line of work for, yeah, I think we are talking about it, but almost 30 years. So
Wow,
that's that,
that's
yeah,
how long you've been
yeah,
doing
so
this.
yeah, so that's some time, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. When people come across the word psychiatry and mental health, or even forgive me, madness, it's rather a scary venture for them because when they see the average person sees how a mad person behaves, it's rather to stay away from the mad person. So why did you rather feel the need to go into it?
I think we were discussing earlier on also about the word. Sometimes I ask, what do you define as mad? But anyway, that's.
Yeah.
But it's a general lay term that's used a lot in our part of the world. But I think what as you get to understand mental health, psychiatry, psychology, you realize that like other disciplines, they are different problems that you identify. So, like how there's malaria and there's tuberculosis, infectious diseases, there's depression, there's anxiety, there's schizophrenia in mental illness. So they are different. So it is unfortunate that we lump
All into
everything together.
madness.
Yes, I think that what people would then perceive is the almost like the worst outcome, which is what then sticks into our minds. And unfortunately, in Ghana, in our part of the world, what is the representation of someone who is mentally ill, mad, unwell, is the disheveled character in the street who is unkempt. But I usually would say that that's more to do with the person's either inability to have or unable to have their bath or find something to eat, but has nothing to do with whether they are mentally ill or not, because there are quite a number of vagrants who are otherwise in that similar physical state. I think there are lots more people who, whether in suits and ties, in nice or in a decent looking appearance, who are very ill, depressed, dysfunctional at work, almost like crying inside. So who form the bulk or the majority of people with mental illnesses, and so there's this unfortunate situation where when people are unwell or dysfunctional, because they the perception is that you have to be dirty, disheveled, extra. They unfortunately do not seek help
because
or
they think you're
support
fine.
because they think they are okay, until they get to the or until unfortunately they end up in that unfortunate situation, and then the chances are that we as society then shun them rather than go out to support, because everybody sees that as okay, no, that's something that we should not associate with, rather than
Yeah, yeah.
just to mention also that this is almost telling it as it is, or crucifying ourselves, in the sense that our attitudes towards mental illness and mental health manifests very clearly in us not being very much a caring society, because when you care, you actually look out for the vulnerable, and you do not necessarily condemn or criticize you actually, but you actually accept them and see how you can support them. We, unfortunately, would rather criticize and almost to a certain extent condemn.
Is this why mental health in general in Ghana is where it is? Because of our lack of understanding?
I think it's a combination of a lack of one understanding, but two, not even willing to open up to understand, because we do not we generally do not maybe care is a strong word, but we generally do not empathize enough to want to associate to understand that that could be me,
Yeah.
or that could be you, and as such, we have not over time made the provisions for those services. I mean, incidentally, we have three big, when it comes to mental health psychiatry, we have three big main hospitals, all of them located in the south or located in the certain part of the south of the country,
Yeah.
which is a disproportionate distribution. First and foremost, I mean, we were 6 million, or some time ago we were 10 million. Now we are 30 million, but we still have
Almost the same size of
yes, almost the same similar structures that are supposed to provide for the 6 million that are supposed to now provide for the 30 million. So we've not kept up with even just our population dynamics and development. Plus, unfortunately, also the resources that are then directed or pumped into mental health or mental illness are just a very small fraction of what genuinely we need and what it should be. I mean, I always like to contrast or make a very simple comparison or realistic whatever with the mushrooming or the explosion of the churches. That is almost an indirect reflection of the lack of mental health services, because then people look for almost help, solution, salvation, etc.
You think faith and religion is causing more harm?
No, I didn't say that faith and religion have their place. However, blind faith and the wrong people fronting for religion actually creates more challenges than sport and health. Unfortunately, what has also been happening over time is there's been a gradual breakdown of our supportive family structure, such that things that we were able to contain within the extended family structure are not possible now because of our breakdown in the structures. For example, this whole thing of calling an old lady who's having certain behavior challenges or whatever a witch, and it's rather made out to be almost like a religious thing rather than a simple social situation where at a certain age everybody's left home, people are lonely, they're on their own, etc. There's not a situation where There were other grandchildren around to play with, to tell stories to, etc. Suddenly, if I can speak a bit of Yubia Bruchiri, and there's families all split around the place, and the loss of of sense of self.
Okay.
You know, for example, the older generation, and I use the word, I use the female gender as an example because they then naturally grow, they outlive their male counterparts, but then suddenly the matriarch is then being vilified as something that she's not, because she's isolated, she's lonely, and we've created this almost, we've broken, or we are gradually breaking down our traditional functional systems. So that's just to digress a bit, but so the lack of development of services, plus the almost a failure to acknowledge that our societies around us are changing, and also our inability to preserve the good things that we've had. Again, good practical example would be, when was the last time you went for a traditional naming ceremony for someone who's been born? Nowadays, the 7-day, whatever, they do it in the church, and the person is called Abraham or John, whatever. But we have traditional names that have meaning and have resonance and tell you where you come from. So all these things are a part of the reason why some of our support structures are breaking down, and in that respect, the social net that used to cushion
It's not there anymore.
is not there anymore. It's not as functional as it used to be.
Okay. And if change is happening that rapidly, I mean, change always comes with its advantages. For example, we wouldn't have been able to have this conversation and put it online for people to see and know some of the things that are happening around them. So technology, yes, modernity, as you've already pointed out, disadvantages are there, and I also see advantages, and one of them is what I just mentioned, and I want to concentrate a bit more on how we use these platforms to spread the word or educate more people. And I'd like to know what are the most, because you did mention that people go through some of these things, are not able to even detect or have people around them to help detect these things, listen to them and everything. What are the most common ailments of the mind that drive us to the points where then we have to need emergency or urgent help? What are some of the most common ones?
I think that depression as an illness and anxiety come to mind when you talk about the most common. And
Depression.
Yes.
A lot of people throw around that word very loosely. So I'm intrigued to know more about what we should know about depression.
Incidentally, depression by the WHO World Health Organization standards, they are the body that's responsible for assessing and progressing and projecting what happens in illness worldwide. By the year 2030, and that's not far away, they project that depression and depressive illness would account for the highest level of morbidity. When we say morbidity, that would be an illness globally, and that would include Ghana and Africa for that matter. In that respect, and again, depression what is a mood state was a mood illness, but there are many other things that happen to a person who is suffering from depression. I think at the core of it is an inability to a loss of functioning ability. So, for example, if you're a housewife, you're not able to take care of the kids. If you are an executive, you can't take simple decisions, or you are falling behind
Short of
at your
your,
work. Exactly.
yeah.
But the other things, like it affects your sleep, your state of mind, sadness. Some people, it affects their concentration. Others, it affects their the core physiological functions in life, your sexual activity, your loss your eating ability. For some people, lose the appetite. Other people compensate by trying to eat all kinds of. And then also, I think I mentioned sleep earlier on, which is a core. So then there's an associated weight loss, and then there are a few.
Can depression also cause weight gain?
Yes, those, and incidentally, again, there are people who then tend to eat the wrong things, and especially sugar-filled. It's almost like comfort eating, sugar-filled.
They want to feel good.
Not even that the sugar makes us feel good, or just sweetens and just makes you. There's almost like a craving to.
Isn't it comfort eating?
Comfort eating, yes,
for boosting their mood.
Yeah,
I'm down. I want to eat something.
Yeah,
to feel.
or to go out and spend. Just
these are all possible character traits.
Yes, these
of
are.
depression.
Yeah, these are.
If anybody's listening and they want to know when, because I mean, every now and then, as human as we are, we may want some of these things. I may want to eat out today. When does it become a trait that I should be worried about in like diagnosing?
I think that when these things go on sustainably for at least a minimum of 2 weeks, and to the extent that they're out of character, out of keeping from
who you normally are.
Exactly. And so then we are beginning to slip, and a lot of the times, and again in our setting, people suffer these things for months before, and then it gets to the stage where they're really struggling before they either would seek help, or in our situation we'll go for prayers, or we'll go for, which will be there a lot of the time, the initial. But by the time they again, sometimes it gets quite troublesome, to the extent that, again, one of the complications of depression is suicide. People take their own lives, and I'm pretty sure that we've all picked up in just the lay press and a few other places that again, suicide, or somebody taking their own life, which in certain aspects of our culture is almost a taboo to talk about, but it's now, at least in the media, or whether social media, whether print media, so it's at least 2 or 3 a week is almost like an understatement. So these are some of the manifestations and presentations of real mental health illnesses or issues. And so the characterization of someone being disheveled and unkempt and mad, in inverted commas, is almost debunked by the reality of the increased incidences of these
things that are just happening around us that we're not paying attention to.
Yeah.
How does one, I want to find out two answers. How does one become honest with themselves when they feel these things happening, and accept that I might be a bit sick or a bit out of my normal self? one, and how does one around them or people around them also help them come to an acknowledgement, first of all, and then taking the action to seek help? So, how do you become a better person? Because you also mentioned that our culture of community has the structure has broken down. So now we're alone, we are by ourselves into our phones and everything. How does a friend help? If I want to help someone, I mean, do better or seek help or be there for them, or if I'm going through it and I want to also be truthful to myself that I may be depressed and not just throw around the word loosely, like, because this week was bad for me at work, Mayor. How do we do that?
I think one of the ways in this creating awareness, talking about these things, educating people. I think there's another aspect which I must mention also, resorting to illicit substances. Alcohol is not illicit, but illicit substances and alcohol. To sometimes that is there, almost like that's almost like hiding behind the illness to try and almost self-medicate or try and make yourself feel good. So that's another sign, another possible trigger. But I think in the way that our society has grown structured, it takes a certain level of self-awareness plus, I think, empathy, or those close by you to also point out, highlight. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, sometimes people feel embarrassed to be in
In that situation.
or for that matter, or in each other's business in that respect. But it's only when we support each other in identifying and being able to confide in people, actually, that we're able to then come out of ourselves and seek the professional help that we.
Yeah. How does one talk to their friend, for example, without coming off as judging or condemn? Because I'm going to retract back into my shell if you come saying that, bro, Charlie, this your drinking thing. How does one approach such a person they suspect might be going through this more with more empathy?
Empathy is key there. I think that, again, as much as our faith-based organizations, some of them have lost their way, but it's also a very important supportive structure where, incidentally, some of the very organized good ones will actually then refer the clients who are going through, or their congregation that are going through some of these difficulties. So look, you need to look at this more professionally extra. So there are various approaches to it, but the key thing really is continued awareness, provision of these services, because we're not an island in the world. These are real issues that affects many people. We have many of our compatriots who have traveled, who've had challenges where they've been, their services that are available. I think that also another aspect that we downplay without realizing also is our dietary choices. I mean, our foods stuff
They cannot contribute.
Yes, they've changed, and they contribute because, and a lot, again, in the common illnesses that we have nowadays, diabetes, hypertension, which are chronic illnesses, which a lot of times we mention them as lifestyle diseases or lifestyle illnesses, but there's a direct correlation between having those things and having things like depression and anxiety. So, yeah, there's that aspect.
Such
Yes,
a wide.
yes, there's that aspect that we also downplay, and I think that earlier on in your introduction, we talked about sleep issues, sleep challenges, extra, and though sleep is also the manifestation of many mental illnesses, and depression being one of them, but also our dietary choices and etc. impact on our sleep, which then creates
All these things.
creates all these things. So it's a whole bag of a whole mix of things, and so we just have to continue highlighting that we need to make the service provision as well as the create the awareness that these things are also out there, and there's help or there's support, treatment available, and that we should not either suffer in silence or suffer in ignorance.
Right, that's good to know. I think we've heard so much. I don't know if you have any final words you want to share with anybody watching this, especially about seeking help, which I come to find, or I've found, that is one of the most difficult things. I mentioned before that self-awareness and being true to yourself is not the easiest thing. I mean, not a lot of people will accept that I'm not fine and I need help.
Thank you very much for getting this opportunity to reach out to your widening audience, and just to say that we as a country, as a people, we need to extend a hand of caring, empathy, and support to those who would otherwise find themselves going through mental health challenges, mental health illnesses, and a lot of the time the symptoms are simple everyday functions that we are we're having shortcomings in, whether it's our sleep, whether it's our diet, whether it's our functioning and behavior at work, extra. And these things are not they are really with us, and there is help available, and
You should not feel ashamed
no,
to
you shouldn't
speak
feel
up.
ashamed to speak up, and you shouldn't think that you're alone.
Yeah, that's really good to know. Dr. Mfodwo, it's really great talking to you, and I hope anybody who watches this video will get something from it and hopefully speak up and not joke about, yeah, you're a Ghanaian, you can't get depressed. That's one of the dumbest things we can ever tell ourselves, and that we will seek help. Yeah, I'm happy to have spoken to you, and hopefully we get to have you here another time and talk about other things into much detail. I can't believe we've already spent over 30 minutes on this one, which means there's a lot more to talk about. Again, this video is sponsored by the Brain and Mind Hospital, and you can reach them on social media at the Brain and Mind Hospital on all platforms. And if you reach out to them, you can speak to somebody and get the help you seek. Don't wait till it gets too late. And yeah, see you in the next video.